It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC, and there is a lot going on today. We are minutes away from the Artemis splashing down off the California coast, and in the last 3.5 hours, so much news has broken on the Eric Swalwell front. I'm going to give you a quick recap of everything that's happened since John and I broke down the incredible allegations from the San Francisco Chronicle. By the way, there's also been new allegations just in the last 3 hours from other staffers, 3 that talked to CNN, 1 that talked to Politico. It's going all over the place. But just based on some of the things that I've been retweeting, Eleni Kanalakis has called for Eric Swalwell to withdraw from the race. Eric Swalwell's Act Blue campaign, which means the website where you donate, has been deactivated. Katie Porter is calling for Eric Swalwell to resign from Congress and to step away from this race. She says, in light of the allegations of sexual assault, Eric Swalwell should resign from Congress and end his campaign for public office. Too often, men escape any consequence for sexual misconduct by stepping out of power. This is a first and necessary step towards justice. CNN is about to be airing a video with a one-on-one of one of the women. That's not very good. The SEIU has suspended their campaign promoting Eric Swalwell. Gavin Newsom says, as we continue to learn more, these allegations from multiple sources are deeply troubling and must be taken seriously. Mike Thompson is withdrawing his support of the campaign. Ted Lieu is withdrawing his support of the campaign. Robert Garcia says that Swalwell should leave the governor's race. The California Federation of Labor says Swalwell should get out. Nancy Pelosi says Swalwell should get out. That's a big one. Steyer says he should get out. Alex Padilla says he should get out. Steve Hilton, well, you figured that one. Ami Barra, it just is Alex Padilla, Adam Schiff. It is everybody instantly. They're all done with him because these allegations, once you read that story, it's hard to unread it. The allegations are so specific. And the fact that the Chronicle, and they didn't name the person because they want to protect their safety, but the fact that she had text messages detailing these assaults from years ago definitely adds a lot of credibility. Eric Swalwell tried a preemptive strike to cease and desist these accusers. It did not work, and I don't know how this campaign goes on past this weekend. It is all over for Eric Swalwell. I can't imagine he even stays in Congress. There's no way you come back from this. It is a disaster for him, and deservedly so. I mean, if you read those allegations, and again, of course, he's not been proven guilty. These are allegations. But if what's being said is true and you have so many people all saying it from different accounts, it sure seems like it. It's crazy to think that someone that did these things think that, oh, they can keep moving up the ladder. They can continue to do this and they can become governor of the state. This guy tried to run for president. It's just, there's a lot of crazy, delusional people in the world, and a lot of those crazy, delusional, sometimes monstrous people are the ones that run for office. So I'm sure there'll be a lot more on the Swalwell front on Monday, but there is other news. So with that, let's get into today's California report at randywang.radio.substack.com, and we start with Bob Bonta.
Bob Bonta.
Because there has been a little war going on between the feds and the state AG's office as to who's getting tougher on hospice fraud. And you know what? I'm here for it. Bill Isaly and Bob Bonta can trade barbs all they want about how, no, this is your fault. No, this is your fault. They're all trying to outdo each other and bust the fraud cases. And that's a win-win because we should all be on the same page about busting these fraud cases. Now, there are some things that Bob Bonta has said that are true. A lot of these organizations were defrauding federal Medicare dollars, not state Medi-Cal dollars. That is true. On the other end, you know what's also true? The fact that the state gave these fake Medicare companies licenses. And when you talk about this specific situation, which is a wild one, where Bonta busted this multi-$100 million hospice fraud ring involving 14 different fake businesses who all the way had business licenses from the state of California. But it goes even further than that, because the way this scam worked out was the scammers were stealing identities on the dark web of people who did not even live in the state of California. So they get someone's social security number because their Walmart got hacked or their Target got hacked. And then they apparently, without any verification or any confirmation, you can take somebody's info with their social security number and you can apply for Medi-Cal. This is the failure of the state of California. There are plenty of failures on the federal government, and only this iteration of this Justice Department seems to be doing something about this. This wasn't a big issue in the Biden administration. It also wasn't a big issue in the Trump 1.0 administration. But this stuff has been going on for decades. But one thing I will say is it should not be so easy that you are able to take a stolen social security number, apply for Medi-Cal, get approved, and immediately start billing thousands and thousands of dollars for fake hospice. There should be a few more verifications to make sure that you're a real person before you qualify for free state health insurance. So that is true. And I'm glad to see that Bonta now wants to take this seriously. And I'm glad that Bill Asaley's taking this seriously. We should all be wanting to go after the fraudsters. I will say, there is one point that the Newsom people are making that is worth making, because I am trying to be as fair as I can here. Yes, the state of California has failed on this. The fact that Shirley Weber has given out so many fake business licenses is a failure. The fact that Medi-Cal can instantly qualify somebody who's not even a real person. It's almost like with the ghost students at California community colleges. There should be a human verifying all of these things. All of that is true. But you can also point out that on one end, the federal government says they are taking this very seriously and they are cracking down on the fraud. And that's great. And I totally believe Asaley when he says that's what he wants to do. I even believe Dr. Oz when he says that's what he wants to do. But what is the federal government doing at the other end? And this is specifically the president, pardoning a whole lot of people for fraud, including people that have defrauded Medicare. That's just a true fact. So I am all for cracking down on the fraud. But if we're going to talk about that, you also got to talk about the fact that Trump has pardoned a whole lot of people for this exact, not this exact thing, but things very, very similar to this. And that seems a little silly to me. Now, speaking of fraud, you can take a stolen social security number and you can apply for hospice money. Or, and this is a weird one, and CBS LA and Christine Lazar have been all over this. You can take that stolen social security number and you can apply to be an Uber driver. And there are so many reports of people who got a 1099 form in the mail finding out that apparently they drive for Uber and didn't know, because someone stole their identity and is using it to ride for Uber, which makes you wonder a few things. Is the person that's picking you up really picking you up? I do want to point out, and I am biased, but in the report, they say they have only gotten one report of this ever happening with Lyft. It's almost exclusively Uber. But you might not know the person that is driving is really the person. And why is that important? Well, how hard is it to become an Uber driver? Like, what is in your background that you need to steal someone's identity? Do you not have a license? Do you have a history of accidents? Do you have a history of tickets? Do you have a criminal record? The fact that Uber's not cracking down on this is an indictment. It is awful. Them also wanting to fight the legislation to crack down on potential sexual assaults, which this could also be linked to, is only going to drive more people into finally dipping their toe in the Waymo pool. And once you go Waymo, and once that technology expands, the rideshare companies, they're not going to be long for this world. And by the way, they know it. You know what Uber and Lyft have been spending all of their money on? Developing technology for autonomous vehicles. They've been screwing over their riders since day one. Now, speaking of screwing people over, LAUSD is real close to a strike. And of course, they're doing this for the kids, except because all the unions are going to go on strike at the same time, the schools are going to close. So the district is figuring out resources to, of course, do the most important job at LAUSD, pass out breakfast for everyone, and figure out childcare. Education, that's a distant third. But there are many things that can be true at the same time. One, I understand that it's very expensive to live here. And especially for entry-level teachers, that's really tough. That is true. At the other end, you can look at LAUSD has horrible outcomes and has seen a huge decline in enrollment, which means less money for the district. That being said, you can also look at how much money LAUSD has and how much money actually goes to the classroom. When you see the embezzlement deal or whatever the hell Carvalho was doing with that AI chatbot, I just saw a thing today where while the average for the state of California is we spend $25,000 per student, at LAUSD it's like $47,000 per student, and they're still getting a subpar education. So I believe that the district might be broke, but also when you look at the staff that has been hired, how many of them are not teachers? Now, of course, the teachers union wants everyone to get more money, including all of the non-teacher staff, but these kinds of strikes and these fights every 3 years are only driving more people to say, screw it, I'm going to a better district. You know, I'm one of these people. My parents had a choice. They could either stay in the San Fernando Valley and put me in private school because they were not going to put me in LAUSD even in the 80s and 90s, or they could drive up to Valencia and put their kids in the Newhall School District and the William S. Hart School District. And, well, that ended up working out real well for me. And finally, in Southern California, we talked a lot about Juan Nala, the Clean LA with Me guy. Well, there are other people that want to do the same thing, including a group of women in Hollywood that are spending their own time and hundreds of dollars of their own money to clean up the streets of LA. And that's great, and it's admirable. They're now getting fed up because the city's not helping. Even when they put everything in a trash bag, the city won't pick it up. 311 is a joke. And we have complete failures in elected government at the city council level and the mayor level when you can't do the basics of make sure the street lights are working and the trash gets cleaned up. Illegal dumping should not be a problem. If you have people littering, we should be fining them for it. If you have people dumping things from contractor sites because it's cheaper to get fined than it is to take something to the dump, time to start rethinking that. But it's one of these problems that's completely unacceptable, yet it seems to be completely accepted. Now, here's a wild one. San Francisco, which has seen a huge improvement over the last few years, especially since Daniel Lurie took over, but even the last year of London Breed, she was really starting to turn things around. Some of the problems she did cause, but you know, so you got to give a politician an attaboy when they do something right. Well, San Francisco is now seeing a surge in not robberies or car break-ins or anything like that, but homicides. They've had a huge spike in homicides, which has all of these gang intervention nonprofits calling for a 24-hour ceasefire where they convince the gangs to all stop retaliatory shooting at each other. And every time I hear one of those things, I think, so wait, then you know who the gang members are and you know that they all have illegal guns and we can't just turn them over to the feds? It's so bizarre. But of course, a lot of them are juveniles. It's just a mess. Here's an interesting one. As insurance becomes even harder and harder to get for homeowners, it's not just your premiums that are going up, but insurance companies, if they're going to write you a policy, are going to make sure that you have things like a digital shutoff valve for your water that they can control, and a detector in case there's an earthquake, and a brand new roof. And while I understand that they want to minimize their risk, when it comes to buying these devices, why doesn't the insurance company do it? Because it lowers their risk on the ratepayer. But of course, we have just the appearance of regulation in the insurance industry. I don't want to hear anybody talk about how our insurance industry is overregulated. It's a bunch of hooey. The person in charge Ricardo Lara is bought and paid for by the insurance industry, gave them everything they've ever wanted and more, and they're still dropping people left and right. In fact, he let State Farm in on the discussions of what he was going to do for them, which incentivized State Farm to drop people left and right. And I'm just going to point out till I'm blue in the face. You want to tell me that the problem with California's insurance industry is it's overregulated? Then why is insurance also a crisis in Florida, where prices have tripled, quadrupled? You have people that cannot sell their condos because the insurance is more than the mortgage payment. So there are a lot of problems with our insurance industry. Overregulation, I don't think, is one of them. At any point, we need somebody who actually hold these companies accountable. And if we're truly at a point where the business model of home insurance just doesn't make sense anymore, I don't know what we do. If the insurance companies really cannot make any more money, if they're really all losing money, I'm not talking about the statewide, I'm talking about their parent companies, these multinational corporations, if they're really doing nothing but losing money, then we have to rethink the entire concept of insurance, and I don't know what that looks like. But if you have a situation where there is no profit to be had, we still need to make people whole, something is going to have to change. In the meantime, maybe the insurance company should buy the water shutoff device that they want you to have. Oakland's taking away something people like, free meter parking on Sunday, because, well, we got to raise revenues, and why not piss everybody off and lower all that brunch traffic? And, you know, I have a policy here. I'm never specifically for or against any person in political office. It's very much about what legislation are you working on? What can you do for me? I'll take a great idea if it comes from a Republican. I'll take a great idea if it comes from a Democrat. Now, notably in Congress, you don't have a lot of those from either side, and I don't really understand what most of those people do. I mean, we know what Eric Swalwell is doing, but that's beyond the point. Laura Friedman, who I'm not a huge fan of, who has done things before she got out of the legislature, like the speed camera law, she actually has a bill going through Congress that I really like. It would use federal grant dollars that go to police departments and allow them to use that money on new technology to specifically stop high-speed chases before they begin. And what does that look like? Well, it looks like using that federal grant money that goes to police departments to build and hire people to run drones, which I think is a way more efficient way of tracking somebody than chasing them with a police car or with a police helicopter. Not only that, they have these devices that you can shoot and they attach themselves to the suspect's car, and it's an automatic tracking device. As much as some people might like to watch the chases on the TV, we have all seen more often than not how dangerous these things are. I mean, gosh, it was just a couple of weeks ago, a couple and their unborn baby lost their lives because they got crashed into by some jackass running from the cops. So if there is a smarter, more technological way to do this, we should totally look into it. I know some people get afraid of the government having this kind of power, but when it comes to somebody that could kill people on the road because they're fleeing from the police, there's got to be some kind of device that we can attach to a drone that can disable a vehicle, that can disable the electronics in the vehicle, fry the computer system, what have you. There's got to be something there. So having the grants that already go to the police agencies from the federal government being used to specifically invest in technology to make high-speed chases a much less likely thing, I am all for it. And I am all for drones replacing police helicopters. Outside of swiftwater rescue, I think a drone can do almost everything a police helicopter can do and more. Now, in Sacramento, I am glad to see we are seeing some huge charges being filed in the fireworks blast in Esparto that killed 7 people. In fact, the people that owned this warehouse full of illegal fireworks, which includes somebody at the sheriff's department, they are now being charged with murder. All the people involved with this, including one of them who was a fugitive on the run, who they caught and arrested at Disney World. Now, also in Sacramento, Jim Cooper, the sheriff, is warning that he's about to see a huge cut to his budget we're looking at $35 million because counties are losing funding across the board. And here's where I got to speak out about something. It is true that a lot of our county budgets are completely bloated. That is true. Totally agree with that. That being said, one of the reasons that all these budgets are getting stretched thin and why we're seeing so many cuts and we're talking about adding more taxes is because of H.R. 1, the, quote, big, beautiful bill that cut a whole bunch of things, including Medicare, it cut Medicaid, and it cut food stamps. And the counties are trying to, I guess, shoulder that burden all onto themselves by passing it on to us or cutting things that we need, like, police, like fire, like the basics. I don't like that. There truly is probably some big cuts that should be made in those programs. At the same time, I'm not a big fan of that we cut all of that stuff to, I don't know what, pay for the war? Not a fan of that whatsoever. And finally, this is a great story. San Diego tried to get a lawsuit thrown out from citizens over their insane trash fees, and they lost. It's going to trial. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. Make sure to subscribe to the California Report at randywangradio.substack.com. By the way, the latest person to call for Eric Swalwell to step out of the governor's race is Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader. Oh, boy. I would imagine after investigation, we also call for him to resign from Congress. Our next guest is running for controller in the state of California. His website is herbmorgan.com. Herb Morgan, welcome to the News Blitz.
Randy, good to be here. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with a little education. For anyone that's not aware, what is the job of the California State Controller?
The California State Controller's job is outlined in the 1879 Constitution. He or she is primarily responsible for the outflow of money, and that duty means pre-auditing expenditures before they're approved and sent, and then post-auditing expenditures to make sure it went where they're supposed to go, and the services and products and things that we want as a state were delivered efficiently. And that, another way to say all of that is the prevention of fraud.
Oh, that's everyone's favorite word these days. Okay, that's a great explanation. So let's go ahead and now introduce yourself to the audience if they don't know you. Who are you and why do you want this job?
So I am Herb Morgan. I am an almost native Californian. I had my first birthday here in 1967, grew up in Oceanside and Westminster, California, went up to school at Santa Cruz. And the reason I want this job is I spent 39 years in finance. I had a wonderful career on Wall Street. I was able to start a company, found a company, sell a company, and retire. My wife won't let me stay home every day. And I thought I would take the back half of my life, I'm turning 60 this year, and provide some service to the state I love. And that service is really, we need to fix the fiscal financial situation of our state. I wrote a white paper about $425 billion worth of waste and fraud and abuse and inefficiency in state government. I have a very simple solution. We're going to try to fix it for the people.
Let's talk about the budget first. We looked at what Gavin Newsom's first budget was when he was first governor in 2019, and it was about $200 billion. Here we are in his final year as governor, and the state budget is nearly $350 billion. How did the budget get that much bigger that quickly, and how are we still broke and don't have any money for anything?
Such a great question, and your numbers are accurate, by the way. He's asked for $349 for the next fiscal year. I would guarantee you that the legislature will give him more than he asked for. They always do. So the question is, like, how did it get there? Why did it get there? And what happens is when you have a one-party supermajority control, both of our legislative houses, they just increase the budget every year. The problem with all of that, if we have the wealth, right? We're a very wealthy state in a very wealthy country, but our services continue to deteriorate each and every year. And there's only one logical conclusion you can make when you see, okay, we went from 185 billion during COVID to 320 this year to let's say 350, 360 next year, running deficits, deteriorating services. The only conclusion is that California state government has become a criminal operation. The money is being stolen, it is being looted, and it is not getting to our programs of compassion designed to help Californians.
Well, and I think the most glaringly obvious example of that would have to be the $20 billion we've spent over the last 5 years on homelessness in the state of California. There was a bipartisan bill that had unanimous support to figure out where that money went, and Gavin Newsom vetoed it.
He sure did. And you know what? You don't need that bill, because there is one constitutional office that is endowed with the power, unlimited power, plenary power, to investigate the books and records of every entity that touches state money. That is the state controller's office. The problem is, in the state controller's office, we slotted in, when I say we, I mean the public sector unions in California, slotted in an incapable person, a person who's very nice and kind and decent, but who has no financial background whatsoever. I believe she was intentionally slotted into that position so that she would not ask the difficult questions about our state finances. Like I said, we are a giant money laundering operation. Everybody gets paid, and then money comes back to the politicians in the form of donations. It's a circular reference. It's a spiraling reference. Look, there's no program of compassion we can't deliver at a higher level than any other country or state in the world, because of our vast wealth. We're the fourth largest economy. We should have the best schools in the world. Instead, we're 46th. We should have the best roads. We're 48th. We should have the best upward mobility. We're 50th. We should have the lowest poverty. We're 50th in poverty in the country, despite the highest level of spending. K through 12, we spend $28,000 per kid. How are we doing?
We're not doing great. We're talking to Herb Morgan. He is running for California State Controller. You can look at his website, herbmorgan.com. Now, one of the things that everyone's paying attention to this week is all of these investigations, whether they're at the federal level, they're at the state level, or they're at the local or, social media journalism level, of the fraud that we're seeing when it comes to hospices, specifically in Los Angeles County, and specifically within this one street in Van Nuys. And Rob Bonta, to his credit, even though you wonder why he's making a press announcement about it this week, holds a press conference talking about this huge bust of almost 24 individuals that stole nearly $200 million of state and federal Medicare and Medi-Cal money. And here's the thing that is infuriating about this scam. So the way that Bonta explained it is the criminals here were taking Social Security numbers and people's identities from the dark web from people that did not live in the state of California. They could then use those Social Security numbers to apply a not real person for Medi-Cal, get them enrolled in Medi-Cal, and start billing Medicare for something that's really hard to track, like benefits for hospice. And this has been going on for years and years and years. But the takeaway that I have from that is, wait, we don't have anybody verifying if the person applying for Medi-Cal is real?
We don't. In fact, you can take that and apply it to just about every one of the departments. Medi-Cal, Medicaid is the biggest. My estimate is $155 billion wasted over 5 years. Follow that with Employment Development Department, same kind of story. We suspended eligibility verification as a state. We did not verify eligibility. The word got out. Every gangbanger in California got unemployment. Every prisoner applied for unemployment and received it during COVID. We drained our trust fund to zero. We applied for and received a $20 billion loan from the federal government, as did 19 other states. We are the only state to not pay back the federal government. Therefore, their security was that they could raise our unemployment tax on every employer in the state of California, which they did on January 1st. When I say we are a criminal operation, a money laundering operation, I am not prone to hyperbole. I spent 39 years in finance. I have never, ever seen anything close to as ineffective and wrong as the state of California.
Now, you talked about the EDD fraud, which some estimate could be as high as $30 billion, possibly even more during COVID. One of the things that we found out recently, thanks to a great investigative piece from Julie Watts at CBS News California, is that the California State Controller's Office and California State Auditors years before that had done audit after audit after audit of how ripe for fraud the EDD system was, the EBT card system was, how ripe for fraud all of these systems were, that we were not verifying people. But apparently, out of all of the audits and all of the investigations that the state does onto itself, the legislature and the governor ignore almost all of them. If you are the controller, how do you get the legislature to actually pay attention to the audits you'd be doing?
Well, you know what? The controller, if she did her job, would not need the legislature. So what happens in California is there is an auditor. The auditor puts out something called a high-risk list. Top of the list, Medicare, has been there for 18, or Medi-Cal, been there for 18 years on the list. And the controller can withhold disbursements to entities who are on that list or who have failed audits in any way. But she's never done that. It shocks the conscience what we've seen here. Every single program, in fact, the state controller's office itself is on the high-risk audit list of the state auditor. It's a different kind of audit that the state controller is supposed to do. It's literally meant to protect us from fraud. And so we have an individual, no background in finance, none, never sat on an audit committee, who's literally the chief fiscal officer of the fourth largest economy in the world. I believe that is by design. And we are being fleeced. We could have the number one public school system. We could have the best health care for immigrants, for non-immigrants, for everybody. We could have clean roads, water, sewer. Everything could be brilliant because we have so much productive capacity and wealth, but it's being stolen.
When you look at our current budget situation where we are in the third or fourth year in a row of a budget deficit, we don't know how much it's going to be. We're still waiting for the May revise. Are we in a situation where we need to raise more revenues, or are we in a situation where we need somebody to cut that budget?
Well, we have a budget this year of $320 billion. If a dollar were a second, 320 billion seconds would be 10,700 years. We have way too much wealth, way too much revenue. We are not in need of money. We are in need of putting the money into our programs of compassion that the legislature has identified as important. The job of the state controller is to make sure our money is used effectively and efficiently. The state controller doesn't decide policy, doesn't decide priorities. It's only there to prevent theft of our money, and it's not getting done.
We're speaking with Herb Morgan. He's running for state controller. Last question before you go, and this is a very specific one. But last month, Julie Watts did an incredible report specifically on the California State Controller's Office, because in March is when you start seeing all of those announcements about the website that shows that the state of California owes you money, claimit.ca.gov. I actually went on that website, found a whole like $300 worth of money that was supposed to go to my old address from 10 years ago. One of the things that we were looking at in that investigation is that the state is holding on to money from so many different Californians, but it's up to the person to reach out and file the claim. Do you think the controller should be a little more proactive, and if the state owes us money, they should be sending it to us? Because if we owe the state money, they know how to find us real quick.
It's actually even worse than described. I know that's hard to believe. The way it works, it should work, is that if somebody, disappears, they have a life insurance policy or a bank account or a stock account, they're supposed to hold that money in trust, and they're supposed to find the person. And as you point out, if you owed the FTB money, they'd find you pretty darn quickly. A couple of years ago, they turned this office, this lost property, into a profit center, a revenue center. And so what they did is they went out and hired people, basically salesmen, to go out and confiscate people's wealth, to escheat it to the state, which is fine. The private companies can't keep it. It should be held in trust at the state. But instead of holding it in trust, let's say you owned Amazon stock 10 years ago, they sell your property and they record an IOU on their books, a non-interest-bearing IOU. There is a class action lawsuit going on now by the Palmer Law Group. An attorney named Bill Palmer is heading it up. They are trying to sue the state of California, and I think they will be victorious, for selling people's property. There's one example of a man who moved to Germany, and he didn't change his address with his stockbroker. They sold his stock, kept the money, put it into the general fund. He came back and said, hey, I should have $30 million worth of Amazon stock. And they said, no, we sold it for $40,000. This is happening in our state.
Oh, it totally is. And just an anecdote, when we did this story on the John Phillips Show, somebody called in talking about how the state had Apple stock that his family had from the 1970s. Can you imagine what that would be worth today?
It shocks the conscience that the people who are supposed to be there to serve and protect us are not doing the job. They are enriching themselves. They are enriching their constituents, their friends. And I don't know if you saw the video. It dropped 3 days ago. It was an undercover video by a guy named James O'Keefe. They got the state controller's office number 2 employee. He thought he was on a date with a pretty girl. He was drinking wine, and he said, there's fraud everywhere. There's fraud in the cities. There's fraud in the counties. There's fraud in the agencies. And we are not doing the audits because the politicians don't want the audits to get done. He said this on tape. Dig it up. You'll see it. Post it. Love it. Like it. All that good stuff.
Herb Morgan running for California State Controller. The website is herbmorgan.com. Thank you so much for coming on today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for all your hard work.
It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. All over Twitter, it's every single prominent elected Democrat in California, all with the same message. Eric Swalwell should drop out of the race. I don't think he survives the weekend. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. Well, I think everyone knows what's going on this weekend. It's weekend 1 of Coachella. So if you're stuck on the 10 freeway right now, going to Coachella, have a great time. If you're stuck on the freeway not going to Coachella right now, sorry about that. I've been to Coachella once in 2012. It was the year that Snoop and Dre headlined one of the nights, and it was pretty darn epic. But don't think I'll be going back anytime soon. I'm a little too old to do ecstasy. But if you want to watch the performances, if you like Sabrina Carpenter or Justin Bieber, or I could not even tell you who any of the other people are, they stream all of it on YouTube, so that's pretty cool. Here's something. Bagel Fest West at the Audrey Ermis Pavilion at the Wilshire Temple. It's $69. And what is Bagel Fest West? Well, it is a festival of bagels. This used to be just a New York thing, but now you get unlimited bagel samples from top-tier vendors, and you can cast your votes for the best bagel and the schmear of the year. Also, fun stuff with live demos and kids. And if this is your vibe, it's definitely not mine. The Rose Bowl is having their flea market. Costs you $12 to see people selling their crap. I'm a minimalist. I do not own junk, and I'm actively trying to get rid of junk. So going to a flea market, not my thing. My brother, obsessed with flea markets, but that's because he likes to think he can buy things on the cheap and sell them for a profit. And maybe he can. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC.